Aloha, and welcome to another edition of A Better Day. I'm State Senator Sam Slom, representing the Senate minority in the state capital of Hawaii. And for the next half hour, we've got a program that I think you'll find informative, entertaining, and interesting. We have a very special guest. Why do we call this A Better Day? Well, listen, we have the administration that talks about a new day, right? We've talked about a new beginning and all that. All of that is fine. Every day you wake up, if you're lucky enough to wake up, you've got a new day. But the key is you want it to be a better day. And in Hawaii, like other places, but specifically here, we face a lot of challenges, primarily economic challenges. And it seems that every day we find that there are more problems in terms of taxes and government regulations and rankings by national organizations that continue to rank Hawaii poorly. Well, look, I don't want to be negative about a lot of things, but we have to talk about them. Because the fact is, we haven't talked about them. We haven't vetted these issues. We get off on tangents. We talk about marijuana. We talk about same-sex marriage. We talk about all kinds of things. But the things that really impact you are the economic choices or lack of choices that you're faced with every day. Cato Institute, a respected national think tank, just came out with a study a few weeks ago talking about welfare and welfare benefits across the nation. And guess what? We're number one again. The worst state in the union for government benefits, the number of people on welfare, and the size of those benefits. Years ago, I predicted that human services expenditures in Hawaii, welfare and food stamps and subsidies like that, were going to surpass the amount of money that we pay for public education. And guess what? It did. Last November, November 2012, we actually had on a graph the crisscrossing of the lines. And now, everybody is recognizing that besides shark attacks, it's welfare benefits that marks us as number one. Just once it would be good if we could be number one in investing potential or in things that we produce like we used to, goods and services and all that. But as I told you, I don't want to be negative, and we're not negative. We're very positive about the future of Hawaii and about the people and the resources that we have here. And that's what we try to do on this program, try to introduce you to some people that have made a difference, that are making a difference. Younger people, older people. The idea that we as individuals can do things that the government can't do. Remember, before the government gives you a penny, it's got to take $1 away from somebody else. The government doesn't have any money. The government doesn't have any resources of its own. It's all reallocation or misdirection of funds. So we keep that in mind. But doggone it, we're going to work to make it a better day. Well, our special guest today is really special because he used to be my seatmate in the state capitol and the Senate floor. He's got a tremendously interesting background, which we're going to learn about, and he's got some very strong and unique views on some of the issues facing our state. So I'd like to introduce former State Senator Gordon Trimble. Gordon had reputation around here. We called him Dr. No because he was always battling me to have more no votes than I did. But anytime Gordon Trimble ever spoke, people listened to his arguments, whether it was about special purpose revenue bonds or tax credits or even people relieving themselves in the park in his district. You miss being in the state Senate, Gordon?
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
Very occasionally.
Very occasionally.
Well, let's go back.
Sure.
When I think about the governors that served since statehood.
Yes.
I remember Jack Burns as a guy that vetoed legislation that would increase out-of-state tuition at the University of Hawaii because he wanted UH to be a melting pot that brought the biggest of the best minds from all over the world so that we wouldn't become an inbred society.
Yeah.
And, he was followed by George Ariyoshi. And when I remember George Ariyoshi, it never seemed to me that he was totally comfortable being a governor. He did it because, at least that was the sense I had as a state employee, he did it because he looked at it as a responsibility, a responsibility of citizenship.
Yeah.
And what I like about you is that you're not pretending to be what you aren't so that you can attain higher office.
Oh gosh, I'd be a lousy pretender, and I'm not looking for higher office. How can you go higher than the Hawaii State Senate, right? So you've been around for all the governors. You were involved with the Foreign Trade Zone?
Yes.
And what else? What were some of the other activities?
Well, since my first experience with government was actually a teaching assistant at the University of Hawaii, and
you graduated from UH.
Well, I have a degree from UH, so I can call it in my alma mater.
Fellow alumnus, yes.
And I think we both thought that economics was something worth studying.
Yes.
And after that, I worked for a commission on operations, revenues, and expenditures. They were appointed by Jack Burns. And probably the best supervisor I ever had in state government was the director or executive director of that commission, Mildred Kosaki. And one of the conclusions that the group came to, it was a mixture of business and labor, was that the state operated hospitals would continue to sap the resources of the state.
And we're talking back in the early 60s.
Well, I'm old, but not quite early 60s. How about like 1973?
Okay, but I mean Jack Burns from back in his time,
right?
And being,
but that was right at the end, okay, right before, and so he appointed it. And by the time we started meeting, George Ariyoshi was the acting governor. But they looked at the Hawaii health system, the state hospitals, and they said, its costs will continue to increase. It's not something that the state should be involved in.
Yeah, and we just in this 2013 legislative session had a big debate and big discussion about outsourcing and privatizing the state hospitals, and they have a constituency within the political structure here. Says, oh no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep it exactly the way it is and continue to sap the taxpayers' money, which we're doing. So nothing has changed in 40 years. Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah,
and so we're still fighting the same struggles that were recognized 40 years ago.
Yeah, everybody likes to throw around this term progressive today, and progressive has a lot of different meanings depending on who's doing the defining. But Hawaii was very progressive upon statehood in 1959 and the early 60s in a number of ways. Our Constitution is different from most other constitutions. We have agriculture in there. We've got privacy in there. We've talked about a lot of different things, but I think that you and I can agree, and particularly since we both are economists by background, that there was much more of an interest in building up and diversifying the entire Hawaii economy back in those days. Now, we seem to have adopted a statewide NIMBY attitude, not in my backyard. We don't want new ideas. We don't want people from outside, whether they be from the mainland U.S. or they be from Asia. We pass all these laws, or at least debate them, about restricting, prohibiting, banning. We're afraid of this, we're afraid of that. We don't want to do anything new. And that was not the case since I was here since statehood. It was an exciting time, exciting place. And we had new inventions and new people, and we welcomed that. And now we've gotten in a rut. And I think the result of that is reluctance and resistance to change, and not reaching our full potential in terms of having investment and business opportunities that will create more of an economic windfall and more jobs for people.
You're raising an interesting point.
I hope so, for goodness sake.
Because I'm sorry if we wind up agreeing with each other, it'll be more accidental than intended.
Okay.
But we talked about Jack Burns looking at the University of Hawaii and vetoing legislation that would increase alien tuition.
Sure.
And what he was afraid of in terms of becoming an inbred society that kept turned in upon itself and got into a squirrel cage where he just kept doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different conclusion, probably has occurred. And so it's important that we step back and we look at the resources, we accept that we have no snowplows in Hawaii. We are different, and we have to look for different alternatives. And you know, I believe that the state legislature and city council should go on junkets because they've spent so much time looking at Hawaii, they have to travel and get a different perspective.
But they go to Vegas all the time, and there you got Bellagio and Paris and all that. You know, that's all they got to do.
Well, that's fine, but that's not the junkets I was talking about. And I don't know if you remember it or not, but in 2008, in the middle of crossover, 8 legislators got on a plane and went to Manila.
In the middle of the session.
In the middle of the session, and I filed formal charges with the Ethics Commission.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to make it an election issue, but as far as I can tell, they're part of the problem. Because any agency that will not admit that they made a mistake no longer has credibility.
See, this is a difference, a basic difference between small business and the government sector. If you make a mistake in small business, you're going to pay for that mistake. And in addition to that, you've got your name, your family's reputation, your resources on the line. You don't have anybody to bail you out or to pass a tax for you or have bonds or anything else. You're right there. That's you. But in government, it seems you make a mistake, you get reelected and get a salary increase.
Well, you know, the problem is that people in state government are not accountable. I think it is wonderful that some people took the initiative to try and have a big event in the arena, UH Arena, the Stan Sheriff Arena. I think
you're referring to the Wonder
Blunder. Wait. Let's not put a tag.
Okay. All right.
Now, if that had come off, that would have been marvelous. Okay. It appears that $200,000 was lost. Now, let's not go into why it was lost. $200,000 was lost.
Let's not go into the actual cost was more than $1 million.
But
go ahead.
The state and the legislature and the University of Hawaii has spent several times that amount examining the issue.
That's right. That's correct.
And it probably winds up with a structure that is even more unworkable than before.
The structure was workable before. The problem was that people ignored their processes, they ignored their responsibilities, they passed the buck, and because it wasn't their money, they weren't concerned about it, Gordon. And we see that in government all the time, too frequently.
If they were accountable, then perhaps people in government would show more initiative and would get more done. But when the bureaucratic process tries to fix it, they make it so almost nothing can be done.
Well, and partly because the people that are trying to fix it, as you say, are people that have limited experience, most of whom have never met a private payroll in their lives, and so the accountability is not a natural thing. So in the legislature, we're faced with the problem. We've got to be responsible for the public purse. At the same time, we've granted the University of Hawaii autonomy, so we don't want to micromanage. They're supposed to be doing the oversight, but they didn't do it. Well, so it goes far beyond Stevie Wonder.
But I know the university wants, and they shouldn't be micromanaged.
No, and it's a great university in many areas.
Selective excellence.
Yeah.
And why did they try and do everything?
Well, that's right.
Concentrate on what you can be really good at.
That's right.
I can remember when Milton Friedman was a visiting professor.
I tell that story often. I was lucky enough to do a TV program with him when he was here.
And I remember somebody that I thought was even better. His name was Armin Algen from UCLA.
Oh, yeah.
And so
not better than Uncle Milton. No, I'm sorry. I'll fight you to the death on that.
Different areas of expertise.
Okay.
And so one looked at monetary policy. The other looked at if there is a change, who benefits, who loses.
Yeah.
So in any change that you come to, look for who benefits.
But
and who loses.
look. I'm not going to let you diss my Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winner, came out with the series Free to Choose, which was on TV and video and all that. And that was what it was all about. You could take all the economic theorems and you could take all the models and everything else, but it was the idea of choice. And we're not talking abortion here, we're talking choice, economic choice, political choice, and all that. He had the ability and the production of that, what was it, 10 segments, to show people, wait a minute, there are other ways of doing this. And government sometimes, many times, gets in the way because not only their lack of experience, but also lack of goals and objectives. They're not the same as people in the private sector. Would you disagree with that?
What I would argue is that people in government said we should not have duplication of services. Mm-hmm. I think that the city and county and the state should be involved in many of the same processes so you can compare as who does it better. Mm-hmm. You don't.
Wouldn't that be costly? Wouldn't that be a duplication?
Well, okay, but what is the expense? Okay, do we see only McDonald's and no Burger King, no Wendy, no Carl
Absolutely
Jr.?
not. That's the beauty of the private sector and a fair, free market, competitive environment.
Where you don't have a situation where the market is necessarily big enough, perhaps you can foster competition between government entities. Why can't we have schools? Why can't we have schools, part of the public sector, competing with one another and allow children the choice of moving?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's your free to choose again. But if you use the V word, voucher, then the unions go crazy here. They don't want that choice. They want one union to take care of all the teachers.
But I didn't.
They want one school district. They want people to go to the school in that neighborhood and control that. And you do have some competition in terms of charter schools. Right. Charter schools are part of the public schools.
Right.
They compete, and what happens? The Department of Education dislikes charter schools with a passion. They're always trying to get the teachers lower salaries, lower resources, and all of that, and criticize them. And yet, to me, that's the best avenue, for public education here.
Okay, so
we spend a lot of money, but we don't get results.
We agreed that there are examples where government entities can compete with one another to turn out a better product.
Agreed, we can.
And if parents and students had the choice as to which school their child would go to, then you don't necessarily need vouchers.
Well, okay, fair enough. That's good. Yeah, but choice, and that's what it's all about.
Let's pick an example that's closer to home. I work for the state of Hawaii. I worked there for I know. I was a teaching assistant at UH for 2 years. That's not counted.
That doesn't count.
I worked for Mildred Kosaki, the Commission on Operations, Revenues, and Expenditures. That doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
I worked for the Department of Planning and Economic Development, but we don't call that anymore.
Mm-hmm. DBED-NT.
Yeah, for 27 years. And
so you're jaded. You're nothing but a public employee that's been there 27 years, and so you want to keep the government the way it is.
No.
Oh, okay.
There are many state employees that work far in excess of 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm.
The majority of them are good employees. I've always said this.
That's what my next point is, okay? And so when you go through this building, you have one group, which is the first among equals, and then you have everybody else.
Yeah. Well, it's really tough if you're a public employee, want to do a good job, have a good work ethic and all that, but you've got an employee to the right of you doing drugs and nothing happens to him or her. You got somebody to the left who's chiseling on the time card or even being at work and all that. It's really hard. And then you have the union situation, which gives second chances, third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances. Nothing ever gets done. I get a lot of whistleblowers. You know that.
So you raise two issues.
Yeah.
Some people would argue that the union has a legal responsibility to represent the worker even when they know the worker's wrong. Why doesn't the legislature pass a law that says the union leadership does not have this responsibility? They can choose which workers to
Well,
represent.
that's an easy one to answer. Lack of political backbone. And the second thing is, so many legislators depend on union support for their election or re-election. They're not going to do anything the union doesn't want, and the union doesn't want that.
But there are many people in the union that are proud of where they work and would like to do a nice job.
Yeah, that's,
okay.
Well, that's true.
And you know, it's funny because
I would say it's in spite of the union, not because they're in the union. It's their background, their family, the way they were brought up.
As a state employee, I looked at who was promoted. And, you know, sometimes the person that was promoted wasn't the best employee. It was the person that laughed at his boss's jokes. And one could make a case, if one looks at this over time, that seniority would have resulted in a better result than what was actually done. And so, you know, it's easy to blame the union. But many of the union offers a lot of benefits. And so if you're a state worker and you're not in a union, you're passing
Well, you don't have that choice anyway.
No, you pay you pay dues.
Right.
Okay, but you don't have to belong to the union. And the you know, when you go in to vote on a contract and there's HGA members at the door, they're not checking to see if you're a member of the union.
They're checking to see how you vote.
Well,
all right, look, we've talked about that. We're running out of time. You got this wide range of experience in the government sector, but I want you to tell our viewers a little bit about your family, a little bit about your background, and what you're doing in China these days. Come on, talk about that.
Since leaving the state legislature, I teach at a women's college in Fuzhou. And the women's college traces its roots to its first president, called Lydia Trimble. And she arrived.
Who is Lydia Trimble?
She's a great aunt. And she arrived in China in 1889, and she spent some time, and she came to the conclusion that what is needed most is a college for women. And I was there this last summer, and I had an opportunity to go to Pintan Island. It's the 7th or 8th largest island in China, and it's right in the Taiwan Straits, and it's reasonably close to Taiwan. And one of the elementary schools there, in Chinese, not in English, claimed that their first principal was Lydia. And so I had a chance to go out on a Sunday to visit the school, and over a dozen teachers turned out on a Sunday just to meet a relative of Aunt Lydia. And the only thing that was left at the school was the well. So we have some pictures of the well. You ought to look up Pintan Island, because party chief or party secretary Gong's job is to spend $10 million a day. You know, if HCDA could only see what they are doing, you'd have real problems on your hands. My grandfather, who was born in Canada, he was the 7th consecutive son. When he was 3 years old, they put him a little white coat on him, and they gave him a stethoscope, and they called him Doc. Well, you know, 25 years later, he had graduated from Northwestern. He was now Dr. Trimble, and he was a teaching surgeon and administrator for 14 years of a hospital in Fujian province, about 180 miles upriver from where Aunt Lydia started her school. And then, you know, I had an aunt and several uncles that were also involved.
So that's a very close connection with China.
And so in 2005, I got an email from the new president saying, Gordon, when are you coming this fall to teach? And so I started in 2005, and every other year for a while I went back. And the students are amazing. I've never seen anybody work harder. And they will put in, you know, 8 to 16 hours a day just preparing for class. And it
quite
is
a contrast.
It's a joy. No,
Well,
you offer something that is relevant. And what I want to teach is I want to teach young women how leadership qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And I do this in the medium of English, but I'm interested in business concepts and leadership qualities.
That's great.
And it's enjoyable.
That's
and
great.
Sam, if you want to volunteer to teach there, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. Thanks for the invitation. Well, look, Gordon, it's been wonderful renewing old thoughts and all that. A final brief comment that you might have?
Yeah. Is it true that our former Senate minority leader that deposed you as minority leader resigned from the Republican Party?
Well, I don't know. You know, we don't talk politics here. We talk about a better day, Gordon, and we know that whatever happens, it will be for a better day. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year. And I guess the real question for you is, are you going to run again for anything?
I'm enjoying teaching in China, and that's occupying about half of my time. But, on the other hand,
we never say never.
It is an interesting makeup
Yeah.
between David Ige and Neil Abercrombie.
Well, we'll have to pursue that later on. Anyway, we thank our guest, former State Senator Gordon Trimble, and we remind you we can make a difference. We can make Hawaii a better day. Aloha. Thank you for joining us.